Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I gotta tell you, I am absolutely pumped for this one because we're looking at something truly special today. We are cracking open the game design document and world Bible for a project called Armorgen, the Era of Resonance. Now, this is a deep dive into a dark, incredibly nostalgic RPG universe. It takes that classic monster collecting genre you might remember from the late 90s and just completely flips it on its head with a massive injection of mature storytelling and real moral weight. Okay, listen to this quote. "You exterminated a species. Now you use their remains as weapons." I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This is definitely not your happy, breezy journey to catch 'em all. This central idea immediately establishes the profound moral dilemma at the very core of this world. You aren't teaming up with cute little creatures here. You are literally wearing the crystallized remnants of an extinct race that humanity wiped out.
So to understand how we got to this dark reality, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The Era of Resonance. 2. The 5 Great Factions. 3. Armor Technology. 4. The Crystalline Bestiary. And finally, 5. The Fate of the World.
All right, kicking things off with part 1, the Era of Resonance, the origins. Let's dive right in and explore exactly how humanity broke the world. So picture the year 2000. We were all terrified about the Millennium Bug crashing our computers, right? Well, in this universe, it actually triggers the opening of dimensional portals all over the globe. And from these rifts, crystalline creatures with elemental powers just start pouring out. Humanity, completely driven by panic and chaos, chooses destruction. In a matter of decades, these creatures are brutally exterminated and the portals are sealed. This leads to a mid-century period called the Armed Peace, where nations basically collapse and society completely fractures. For almost 100 years, the crystals harvested from these dead creatures were just cataloged as inert, genetically dead material. That is, until the year 2100, when a world-altering breakthrough known as resonance is discovered. Moving right along to Section 2, the 5 Great Factions, a divided world. Now, what's truly fascinating here is how humanity divides itself to cope with the immense guilt of that extermination. First up, we have the Archive Union. Operating out of these massive laboratory cities in former Europe, these are the technocrats and scientists who actually discovered resonance. Their motto is, "If we forget, we will do it again," which perfectly captures their whole vibe. They view the past as a tragic event that needs to be studied and tightly controlled just to guarantee a disaster like the extermination never happens again. They don't even want military dominance. They just want the absolute monopoly on knowledge. Now contrast them immediately with the Iron Accord. These guys are the militaristic heirs of the original armies who fought the preachers. They justify the extermination as a harsh but entirely necessary evil for human survival. Based in the fortified zones of what used to be North America, they see these crystal armors as the ultimate weapons of deterrence. To them, only overwhelming centralized force can maintain order. Then, we get a completely different perspective with the Green Remnants. These are your ecological dissidents, survivors, and rogue scientists hiding out in the world's regenerated forests. They are driven by this profound collective grief over the genocide. Their core belief? They weren't monsters, they were guests. They view the militarization of the crystals as a deep desecration, and they're just looking for an ethical coexistence with the remaining natural energies. Spread across the coastal cities and trade routes, we find the Free Zones. Now, this isn't a unified government at all. It's way more of a chaotic, anarchist network of autonomous communities. Their motto, "We have seen what power does," really highlights their absolute rejection of flags and authorities. Out here, survival is paramount. In the crystals? Well, they're simply treated as currency, protection, and status symbols to be traded on the black market. And finally, we have the deeply, deeply unsettling Awakened Path. This isn't a political faction, it's a radical spiritual movement based in the vertical temples of former Asia. They believe the extermination wasn't random at all, but their goal isn't to rule humanity, it's to completely transcend it. They want the ultimate biological fusion between human and crystal, viewing the armors not as tools, but as the literal next step in human evolution. So when you put their philosophies, colors, and territories side by side like this, it's so easy to see how the game's map is just an absolute powder keg. You've got the cold logic of the Archive Union clashing with the brute force of the Iron Accord, while the Green Remnants are trying to protect exactly what the Free Zones want to sell, all while the Awakened Path is just trying to leave humanity behind entirely. It's a massive web of geopolitical tension. All right, part 3, Armor Technology, the Power of Resonance. Let's see how all this incredible lore actually translates into the mechanics of the game. Remember how I mentioned resonance earlier? Well, the major twist of the year 2100 was discovering that the harvested crystals were never actually dead. They were just waiting. Resonance is defined as the molecular reconfiguration that happens when an inert crystal interfaces with a compatible human neural system. So they aren't batteries giving you energy, they are dormant biological blueprints that literally rewrite whatever they touch.
Because direct integration is entirely lethal, the Archive Union developed these pseudo-suits to mediate a highly dangerous three-step process. Step 1. The conveyor acts as a chest insertion point. Step 2 is synchronization, where the crystal aggressively rewrites the suit biomechanically, basically trying to recreate the form of the original extinct creature. And step 3 is adaptation. Under the stress of combat, the armor evolves. And listen, once you sync with the crystal, it stops being a tool. It becomes a completely irreversible biological commitment.
Which brings us to Section 4, the crystalline bestiary. Choose your path. In the game, you're forced to choose from one of 3 elemental starter paths, which will permanently shape your journey. Let's start with the grass element, which represents growth and natural protection. You begin with a base creature, Dryon, a fragile, deeply sensitive little scout that maps out portal energies. But then look at the incredible transformation into its armor form. Through resonance and combat, it becomes 𝗧𝗵𝗲, this massive mythological tank. Evolving into 𝗧𝗵𝗲 means you become an immovable biomechanical fortress fused with sacred roots, capable of dominating the battlefield and healing your allies. Now, totally contrast that with the fire element, which is focused entirely on consumption and destruction. It starts off as Piran, this volatile, erratic spark driven purely by the instinct to consume energy. But through combat stress, it evolves into the terrifying form of an 𝗪𝗲𝗄. I mean, just look at this hellish, demon-like armor design. Fueled by these ruby-red crystals, 𝗪𝗲𝗄 represents unnatural fire, a force of pure entropy that doesn't just burn things, it completely erases whatever it touches. And finally, we have the water element. It starts with 𝗪𝗏, a silent, fluid creature that kind of seems to slip right through reality itself. But its ultimate armor form? That's 𝗬𝗨𝗪, the supreme tank. Born of abyssal pressure, 𝗬𝗨𝗪 is this immovable guardian made entirely of sapphire blue crystal. It can manipulate oceanic pressure, absorbing immense amounts of damage, and projecting this calming, time-slowing aura right over the battlefield.
So the absolutely crucial point here is the philosophical juxtaposition that is built right into the gameplay. The game specifically contrasts the fiery entropy of 𝗪𝗲𝗄, which destroys and erases, with the watery memory of 𝗬𝗨𝗪, which preserves and protects. These aren't just elemental damage types you're picking from a skill tree, these are fundamental worldviews. The armor you choose to wear reflects exactly how you believe the world should be shaped.
And that leads us perfectly into our final chapter. Part 5, the fate of the world, your burden. This is where we look at your specific role as the protagonist dropped into the center of this mess. The core gameplay loop of Armorgen is entirely about the crushing weight of your choices. You don't just pick a starter and blindly wander off. Every single evolution of your armor requires your manual confirmation. You actually have to choose to push these crystallized remains further. And as you build your resonance registry, cataloging these extinct beings, you directly shape the geopolitical map. The craziest part? Mid-game, you can actually betray your chosen faction. Every alliance you make or break has permanent consequences on the regions around you. Which brings us to the end. I want to leave you with this final, provocative question that the game absolutely forces you to answer. In a world shattered by human guilt, where every single faction genuinely believes their extreme philosophy is the only way forward, whose side will you choose? Will you seek to control the past, force order, protect nature, embrace chaos, or transcend humanity altogether? The choice and the ultimate shape of the world is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.